Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Tales 2025. It's a beautiful fall day today, and let's explore some exciting concepts in software engineering together. Today, I'm going to talk about FastAPI in Python, define REST API interface, and show you how to run your code locally and test it out. Let's begin. Before looking at FastAPI code, let's understand what are the API protocols and why do we need a framework like FastAPI? Where will we need it and what are the trade-offs? Two major API protocols are widely used in industry right now. One is REST, the other is GraphQL. Most common one is REST protocol, and in this video, I'll be using REST. REST protocol usually defines a unique API endpoint which clients can use to interact with data model. For GraphQL, API calls will happen via one endpoint, and the CRUD operations are supported through post, get, update, and delete in REST API. CRUD operations are supported via query, mutation, and subscription in GraphQL API. CRUD is a short form for create, read, update, and delete operations. I'm planning to do a deep dive on GraphQL in another video. In this video, I'll be focusing on REST. Before we jump into any implementation, it's always a good idea to have a high-level overview for the API interface. While defining an API interface, we usually define types. And why do we need types? When we don't have types, we could store wrong data. For example, I could store a string instead of date, epoch, time value, which could go and corrupt my data. And later, if I ever want to query the API, I may have data corruption. In Python FastAPI, we can define such a model and add validation for models via Pydantic. Pydantic is a popular Python package that lets us do data validation. We can either hardcode the methods from scratch or use a framework that does the hard work for us. A framework like FastAPI will help you organize your API interface for better readability, and you need not reinvent the wheel to build APIs ground up. You will be up and running quickly instead of going through all the hard work of setting everything up by yourself. Python has become a popular choice due to ML, AI integrations like scikit-learn, PyTorch, Pandas, and Async.io. YouTube is my artistic outlet for showcasing my drawing talent. So I drew with Xcali Draw. Life of an engineer, am I right? To dive deeper into FastAPI and Pydantic, let's pick a real-world use case, designing API for a parking garage. Parking garage allows us to reserve a parking spot for a period of time. Designing a parking garage is also a popular system design problem. Let's take a closer look at the data model design for parking spots and users in parking garage. A user and a parking spot are relevant entities for parking garage. A user will have an ID, first name, and second name. The parking spot will have an ID, reserved at time, reservation expiry time, and reserved by user, the one that we created here. A create method will take all necessary inputs to create a parking reservation. A get method will return all the reservations data if the ID is not passed in. If the ID is passed in, it will return the details of that specific one requested as part of the API request. Update will patch reservation details based on the input patch that we pass. Delete will get rid of the entity for the given ID that's passed in for the request. Okay, I'm a visual learner, and drawing out the API interface on a notepad helps me out to think through what are the data models that I might create and how they would look like. Okay, Now that we have a bird's eye view of how our system or the API interface is going to look like, let's dive into the code. To get started, I created a VS Code folder where I added a requirements.txt. In this, I have added FastAPI and Pydantic dependencies and also declared the dependency versions that I would need for it to work as expected. I created a reservations.py file where I'm defining the models needed for the reservation system. Here I have defined user and parking spot. They both extend from base model, which is the model that comes from Pydantic. And the user has properties like ID, first name, second name. Parking spot has properties that we have defined previously in our notepad. Thing to note here is the union method here. We can also use optional, but without union int and none, the input expects this ID value to be sent, and for create, usually it's going to be an auto increment for ID. We will go into more details when we are integrating with database in later videos, but for simplicity, trust me on this. And I have also implemented the datetime here to come from datetime package and then created a union out of it. And reserved by is referring to the user who reserved that parking spot. And when I click this, you can see it refers to this user. So that's how we are tying these two models together here. Now moving on to the actual code. I have created a file called main.py and app equal to FastAPI. This is what initializes the FastAPI server. I'm importing FastAPI from FastAPI, and then I am importing my models and reservations. From there, I'm importing parking spot. I'm also importing date time and time delta. Usually, whenever we are interacting with data, we can actually implement the SQLDB. But to keep things simple, I have created a global variable which will hold the state for now. I'm defining that total 200 is the number of parking spots that we have, and parking spots is the list that will contain the details of all the parking spot reservations. And app.get is what defines the reservations endpoint, and I have defined a get all reservations method which will return all the parking spots that are there. And the method, this one is returning all the parking spots. And I have also created another get method which will take in an ID which will return a specific parking spot based on the item ID that's passed in. And post method is the create method which is defined via app.post, and create reservation is one where we are trying to append a list of entities to the parking spot. Here is where I'm updating the reserve date and expires based on the date time that I have imported above. And app.put is where we are going to patch the details of the parking spots for a given ID that's passed in with the details of the new parking spots that's passed in. App.delete is the method that we use to delete a entity within the parking spots list. In order to run the FastAPI, first we need to activate the virtual environment. We do that via source, vn, then activate. This will activate your local virtual environment where you can install all your dependencies. Previously, we have defined all the dependencies in requirements.txt. We can install it via pip install -r requirements.txt. All these requirements will be installed within your local virtual environment, and the global Python environment will not get impacted. Now that we have installed all the dependencies, let's go ahead and run the FastAPI server. We do that via, let me clear the terminal, FastAPI del main.py. Main.py is the file where we have added all the API get, create, update, delete methods. Okay, let's run this. Okay, so whenever we make a change in our folder like this, go here, Command S, I'm saving a file, go back to terminal, and then you can see the related app hot reload so that you don't have to restart the server. Now that our server is up and running, let's go to the docs URL to see the list of all the API methods along with the supported operations. Before we query any reservations, let's try to create a reservation. Here, let's click on the try it out method. I'm going to delete them because they will get auto-populated. I will add the user ID as hello world and click execute. Here we see that this particular API method has succeeded and the data got added. We can query it by calling this endpoint, which will return all the API data for us. Click execute. You can see all the data for this. And now if I want to test out reservations item ID, I'm going to click one here and click execute. You can see internal server error because that doesn't exist. Let's try to get 0 ID, click execute. Now it returns something because that particular ID exists. Okay, now I want to test out update. Let's say I want to update the ID 0 because all the indexes start at 0. I'm going to keep the ID here. Instead of ID 0, I'm going to say hello world edited, let's say. And I'm going to say execute. And this executed and this got updated. Now let's try to query all the reservations. Click execute. Now you see the edited result here. Okay, that's all I wanted to say in today's video. To summarize, FastAPI is a Python API framework that gets you up and running quickly. API schemas can be defined with types, and Pydantic can help us do data validation. FastAPI comes with a UI that you can use similar to Postman to test your APIs locally. We looked at the reservation endpoints, which is a very basic parking garage design, which is like the bare minimal of a design that you would look at. From here on out, we can build out more complex use case and more complex implementation. I will leave references to the code in my GitHub link in the video description. Please do check it out. And I encourage you to try it out by yourself, make some changes, get the code running, and then test it out yourself. Software engineering is all about having fun building user experiences. I hope you discovered something fun today. Thank you so much for choosing to watch my video. In my next video, I will go over Apache Solr search engine queries integration into the Get API with query parameters. See you in my next video.